message from God to all who will hear. So to all his children, please come, draw near.
The cowboy decided he needed to hear some preaching, so one Sunday he rode into the city, found himself a beautiful white church, rode up, tied his horse off at the fence. He still wore the jeans and the boots and old work shirt, all dusty from the previous day's work and the ride in, and of course his hat. In fact, he hadn't been off the range for a while, and, he looked a little scraggly. Still, he had to hear some preaching. So here in the choir, he walked up the steps into the church and took a seat in the front row. After service, he shook the hand of the preacher on the way out, saying, "Good sermon today, Padre. Thank you." "Tell me, sir," the preacher politely returned, "do you pray?" "Why, yes, sir," the cowboy replied, "as much as I can while out working." "Well, maybe you could ask God how you should dress when coming to this church?" Puzzled, the cowboy nodded, tipped his hat, and left. A few weeks later, the preacher was amazed to see the same cowboy in the front row, same seat, looking as if he hadn't bathed or changed since the last time. After service, he asked the man, "Didn't you pray to God about how you should dress when coming to this church?" "Why, yes, sir, I did," replied the cowboy. Looking the cowboy up and down as if he was joking, the preacher asked, "Well, and what did he say?" Well, he put his hat back on, shuffled his feet a moment, and then the cowboy replied, he didn't rightly know either. You see, he hadn't been to this church before. How should a Christian church and church community look? How should it behave? Having grown up in an Anglican denomination, I thought most churches were like mine, with lots of people crowded into pews in suits and dresses, dressed in priestly vestments and acolyte robes up front, a whole lot of pomp for the Sunday circumstance. And as I grew older, I found I had to force myself into a place of worship within myself that more met with what I thought God was to me. My Lord. I would bow and genuflect with purpose and absolute awe and reverence. I would pray with passion. I would find the church denomination I had grown up with, less and less tolerable with each passing year. And then I found God intolerable for letting it happen, but that's another story. Maybe I'll share it later. When I finally returned to God on my knees, I found others like myself also seeking answers to those two important questions, not from the standpoint of the world so much as from the standpoint of God. Let me put it in a biblical way, using a New Living Translation just for ease of understanding. "And now a word to you who are elders in the churches. I too am an elder and a witness to the sufferings of Christ. And I too will share in his glory when he is revealed to the whole world. As a fellow elder, I appeal to you, care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you can get out of it, but because you are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example." That's from 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 through 3. I was looking for a good example. Not people proud of themselves, but people humble before God, and I wasn't finding it in the church denomination I had grown up in. And I wasn't the only one having such issues. Around the same time, I found the church in which I was currently to serve. Another man in the area had also been trying out churches and found them not at all what he expected Christianity to be. He wasn't looking for the loud popular music or the feel-good, politically correct sermons so many churches are turning to. He wasn't looking for a new clique to join like so many churches before had turned into. He was looking for what he called the true church of God, where God's purpose was served. God's love prevailed and showed itself, and God's will be done. And he was not finding it. So one day he looked to heaven, an angry fire in his eyes, and he told God he would give only one more chance for God to show himself in a church before he gave up, believing there is no God. But he would not make it easy for God either. No, he took a while. He let himself grow out his whiskers and get really dirty. He bought the worst-looking clothes he could find at the second-hand store to wear, randomly chose a church from the phone book, and planned to go there on Palm Sunday, one of the days when one kind of expects everyone to be dressed in their best. When he arrived, he was greeted by the greeters at the entrance to what looked like a large party. Tables were out, breakfast was being served. He was offered food and hot drink as he was sat down at a table with others who greeted him in their Sunday best. They wanted to know about him and his needs, explained the church mission behind the motto, serving our neighbors, and then he was treated to the Easter cantata, the story of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection in song, and he was introduced to the pastor. He left perplexed. He had challenged God. He expected God to fail. And God came through. The next Sunday he was clean, shaven, in a suit, and returned to reintroduce himself to the pastor. And of course his story would later become a sermon. And now come to think of it, it is again. This is not to say that this church community or any church community is absolutely perfect, but the church or holy temple, as the Bible puts it, within our being should at least strive to be, shouldn't it? And shouldn't we be the example to others of what Christianity really is by being the light? So let me read some instruction from Romans. Just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So, if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, then serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, then take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Don't be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Amen. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.